morning, welcome to class. This morning we are going to continue on with the last two parts of the chapter. We are currently at tab E. We're going to look at what happens after fertilization. Wait, have we done fertilization? No, sorry, not post-fertilization. We're going to look at fertilization in plants and humans today. Okay, so you should be at tab E. Before we begin, I would like everyone to also have your notes with you. I do find that this part of the notes, some students find it challenging to make sense of what's happening. So we're going to do both at the same time. We're going to read the notes concurrently as well as watch some videos. Okay. Okay, as usual, if you refer to your SLS, it'll tell you which section we are at. We're at 7.2.3 and 7.3.5. And again, everyone, this morning, first, a little bit of reading. We go to 7.2.3, which is on page 5. Okay, page 5 and page 6 of your textbook. Okay, may I give you around 7 minutes to have a read of 7.2.3. This morning, we're going to start off first by looking at how plants go through fertilization. As you read through, will you highlight any keywords that you find very unknown, very foreign to you? As we watch the video later on, we'll try to find the meaning of them. Okay, so around 7 minutes of reading time. Right. The floor, some questions. Any vocabulary you found particularly new, you couldn't quite make sense after reading through and looking at the diagrams? If I just take some now, write them on the whiteboard so I make sure I address them. We got every vocab minutes. Yes, we. Okay, polar nuclei. Let's look for that in a while. Polar nuclei. Any more? Okay, micropyle. Micropyle. What is the micropyle? For those of you searching for these words, let's see. Where's the polar nuclei? Over here. Two genetically identical polar nuclei. Then Jiaqi was referring to the micropyle. Where's the micropyle? Which para is that? Jiaqi?
It's number 5.
Number 5. Okay, all the way down. Okay, over here. Polar tube reaches the micropyle end of the ovule. Any more? Sorry. Haploid egg cell. Okay, haploid egg cell. Where do you find that word? First paragraph. Okay, and haploid egg cell. Any more? Okay, Ishan and Zoe. Okay, tube cell and generative cell. Where is that? Over here, right? Second para. Tube cell and the generative cell. Okay, let's search for that later too. Zoe? Triploid endosperm tissue. Okay, the one in gold. Any more? Are you? Angiosperm. Okay, good. Down here, angiosperm. Any more? Okay. I'll try to hit all of this in a while. Okay. Later on, as we watch the video, I think it will be much clearer what all these words mean. You just pay attention to the words we have brought up. For example, let's look out for what in the world are these polar nuclei? What in the world is haploid egg cell, tube cell, generative cell, what's the micropyle end of the ovule, what's the triploid endosperm tissue, and what are angiosperms. For a start, let me address two of them that you cannot find in the video. First and foremost is this thing called haploid egg cell. Okay, we learned before from meiosis that at the end of meiosis, if it goes through meiosis 1, then it goes through another round of meiosis 2, you should end up with cells that have half the amount of DNA as compared to the original. Yeah? We refer to the original cell's amount of DNA as diploid, whereas those with half the amount of DNA as haploid. Haploid. So for example, if a human cell contains 46 chromosomes, by the end of meiosis, you should get 23 chromosomes in each cell. Okay, haploid. We also know that in our cells, we have, when we say 46 chromosomes, in other words, we have 23 of each pair of chromosomes. So for example, here's one pair of chromosomes, maybe another pair of chromosomes, another pair of chromosomes, 23 pairs in total. Questions? So what's a haploid cell? A haploid cell is the cell that contains half the amount of DNA as compared to the original parent cell. It is the result of going through meiosis. And in meiosis, we only use it to produce two kinds of cells, sperms and eggs. Sperms and eggs. Now it makes sense to you that sperms and eggs need to have half the amount of DNA. Because when they fuse back together through the process of fertilization, you should get back a cell called the zygote that should be diploid in nature again. Imagine cells that don't go through meiosis to form sperm and egg, instead goes through mitosis. you end up with cells that are diploid. A diploid sperm plus a diploid egg, we're going to end up with a quadruploid zygote. Every generation that goes by, the cells will gain more and more and more DNA. So that's why we go through this kind of halving process. Okay, so this relates back to the previous chapter of meiosis. Where does meiosis take place? So it takes place at our sexual organs, namely the testicles as well as the ovaries. That's where it should take place, produce your eggs and the sperms. Where meiosis should not take place is places like your ear, your eyeball, your forehead, right? You don't produce sperms anywhere or eggs anywhere on our body. Okay, questions? Then I'll go to the last vocabulary. Angiosperms. That's what time you ask. What are angiosperms? Angiosperms. I'd like you to ignore the word sperms because it's nothing to do with sperms. Okay? Angiosperms are flowering plants. And that's our focus for JH4. We study flowering plants. Plants that flowers. It's a bit odd to say this, but it makes more sense if I give you a little bit more context because there are plants that don't flower. For example, there are pine cone trees. They are very, 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 very tall in those European countries. You know what pine cones are, right? I'll draw a pine cone. Something like that. Okay, pine cone trees, they don't have flowers. So not all plants flower. Their reproduction method is a little bit different. If I'm not wrong, ferns like the ones out there, they don't have flowers too. They make use of spores. Ancient plants are kind of like the ferns out there. No flowers, just spores. They actually disseminate through water. So if I'm not wrong, the spores out there of ferns, they do have little like flagellas that can help to move the spores. Flowers developed quite later on in the evolutionary history, when leaves started to have color, started to change shape, then you start to get the flowers that you see today. Okay, so those are the two vocabulary. Let's try to find out what the word the rest means. I quite like this particular video. This video is quite an old documentary, so the visual effects not very nice, but it's all we need because it really depicts what the process of fertilization looks like in plants.
The transfer of pollen to the receptor surface of the stigma is called pollination. This happens by various means, such as wind, insects, or other animals. The pollen grain now absorbs water and begins to swell. A pollen tube soon emerges containing the tube nucleus and the generative cell. The generative cell divides to form two sperm cells. In order to reach the ovaries, the pollen tube must now carry the sperm down the full When the pollen tube reaches the base of the style, it grows into one of the 3 ovaries. Inside the ovary, the tube locates the 2 rows of ovules. Approaching an ovule, the pollen tube grows into the microcarp, where it penetrates the megasporangium. It then grows into one of the synergid cells, releasing the 2 sperm. One sperm fertilizes the egg cell, forming a diploid zygote cell. The second sperm fuses with the 2 polar nuclei, forming a primary endosperm cell. This double fertilization is characteristic of all angiosperms. The ovary contains hundreds of ovules, and each requires a pollen tube to be fertilized.
Get a
To
hundreds of
accomplish
pollen
this, the
tubes.
style supports the growth of a large number of pollen tubes. These grow down the style and enter each of the 3 ovaries. When the pollen tubes enter an ovary, they each locate and fertilize an ovule. Each ovary now has many fertilized ovules, which will develop into seeds. After the ovules are fertilized, the flower undergoes several changes. Many parts begin to wither. Eventually, these parts are shed. Only the ovary remains healthy and firmly attached to the stem. Inside the ovary, the ovules are now about to undergo many changes.
Okay. Right, let's go back to our textbook. Better now after looking at video. Let's address a few things. First and foremost, this was me when I was in secondary school. I used to think pollen grains are sperms. But are they sperms? Are the pollen grains really the sperms of the plant kingdom? Well, then we look to the structure of a pollen grain. If you look at the structure of a pollen grain, it usually comes with an outer coating. This outer coating sometimes has certain structures that allow the pollen grain to be able to cling on to the stigma. But it's inside this structure that we want to pay attention to. Because first and foremost, this is where you find the first cell. Inside your notes, you have encountered a cell called the tube cell, which was what Yishan was asking earlier on. The tube cell comes with its own nucleus. But on top of that, one very interesting thing about pollen grains is that it contains a cell within itself. So inside the tube cell, you find one more cell, also with a nucleus. And this cell is the generative cell. So if you read sources online, they often say pollen grains are cells within cells. Because there's a generative cell inside a tube cell. thank God the name of the cells make sense. Because the function of the tube cell is for the pollen tube to grow. It controls the growth of the pollen tube. And that's why when we watched the video earlier on, you saw a nucleus following just behind the pollen tube. That's the tube cell nucleus. So under the right conditions, the tube cell will start to deform, and out comes the pollen tube. The nucleus of the tube cell will follow suit, follow on. It is what controls the growth of the pollen tube. Just trailing behind this tube cell nucleus, you find the generative cell. And the word generative perhaps can serve as a reminder to us. Generate what? Well, it generates the sperm cells. In fact, it generates 2 sperm cells. So under the right conditions, you'll find that one generative cell divide to form 2 sperm cells. And these 2 sperm cells just trail behind the tube cell nucleus. Okay, so that's what they are trying to say. I think the video does better justice to what's in the words. Next key thing is, why in the world do we need 2 sperm cells? Well, because 2 rounds of fertilization is about to take place. The first round is what we are quite used to. We learned before that fertilization equals to the sperm cell fusing with the egg cell. So here I have an egg cell. And the sperm cell number 1 will fuse with it. So that's the first fertilization. And what you get is your zygote, the baby plant. Yes.
In the video it showed like a lot of tube cells.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there's hundreds of ovules inside.
Oh. So the male part of the plant cannot tell how many ovules are going to be in ovary. So kind of like humans spam pollen grains. So the pollen grains are in excess in hopes that one pollen tube will reach the ovule. So it's usually in excess. So, good question. There's a question also another student asked in O3. I have not been asked that question before, but I would like to think that it's kind of like in humans. After the first sperm fertilized the egg, right, then the egg will create a barrier to prevent more sperms from coming. I think that's most likely what will happen. But I don't know the mechanism. But it's a good question because you cannot fertilize what has been fertilized. Sure? Correct. So the video had 3 ovaries. That means if the pollen tube realizes that this one has already been taken, actually there are many other ovules with many other eggs. Sorry? Oh, okay. Ishan asked, will 3 ovaries develop into 3 fruits? That really depends. Some fruits that you look at, you're looking at one large ovary that has been enlarged. Some fruits that you look at are made up of a few ovaries fused together. Especially if you find fruits that have segments, they are usually the result of many ovaries together. For example, you know orange? Orange can peel apart several segments, right? That's usually the result of several ovaries that have fused together to look like one single fruit. Yes?
Like in humans, right, if you have like if you have one fertilization take place but then it splits, then you can have twins, like
Right.
identical twins. Does the same thing happen in plants?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. Because, okay, we look at what this will develop to in the wild. Okay, actually, I have no idea. The only way to prove that, right, would be if I were to plant a seed and I see two small little plants come out, that means there were twins inside. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that can happen. Can you do a quick Google? Are there plant twins? Are there twin plants? That would be very cute. That means within one seed you can find two plants sprouting out. Okay, so that's first fertilization. But we have two sperms for what? Because the second sperm will go on to fertilize this bigger cell. This big cell is quite interesting because it contains two nucleus. Each nucleus contains half the amount of DNA. So in other words, if I look as a whole, this particular cell is diploid. It's just that its DNA has been separated into two separate nucleus within one cell. Okay, I say again, each nucleus contains half the amount of DNA. So if you look at the cell as a whole, actually it contains the full set of DNA. It is a diploid cell. We recall all of these sperm cells are haploid. They have half the amount of DNA. What do we get from this second fertilization? We get something called, and Zoe brought that up earlier on, we call it the triploid endosperm tissue. Triploid because, you know this, you take haploid plus a diploid, now you have a triploid. You have three sets of DNA now. But why go through two rounds of fertilization? Fertilizing different things. Well, that's because, unlike babies, which are perpetually attached to mom via the umbilical cord inside her belly as baby's growing, you notice every ovule, so this is an ovule, every ovule will eventually become a seed. Inside this seed, you will find the zygote. So you should find a baby plant. Here I have a baby plant. The leaves wrapped up, haven't sprouted out yet. So that's baby plant. At the same time, notice the seed is on its own. If the seed were to be thrown into the soil, actually how is it going to survive the wild? Unlike you, which develop inside your mom, and mom's always supplying nutrients via umbilical cord, this seed is no longer attached to the plant. How is this baby plant going to get any nutrients of any sort? That's the reason for the second fertilization, because this particular tissue serves the function to give this baby plant nutrients. So I'm going to draw the triploid endosperm tissue in red now. It is this layer of tissue that surrounds the baby plant that will supply nutrients so that it can survive or trap in the seed, so that it has enough energy to burst out of the seed. Once it bursts out, the leaves can take over to carry out photosynthesis to get its own food. But while trapped inside, it needs to find a way to get food. It comes from the endosperm tissue. That's why seeds have lifespans. It's not right to think that seeds can last forever. They don't. Okay, seeds do have a lifespan. They have an expiration date. Their baby plant inside can die if kept for too long. there are two fertilization taking place. Yes, yeah. Ferns. Sorry, ferns. What about ferns? Is it? Okay, what about ferns? I don't think so. So from my knowledge, if I'm not wrong, the spores, you see underneath the fern over there, you see a lot of like rows and rows of, yeah, those are spores. If I'm not wrong, the spores once meet an egg, almost like, yeah, from then on, if I'm not wrong, it will start to develop into multicellular structure that can develop roots, they immediately take root. So it does not have an additional nutrient sac that provides it nutrients. If I'm not wrong, once the sperm or the spore finds an egg, then it will start its development from there. Oh, fair enough. Isn't there a better way of survival than that? Why would flowers develop and why would we have seeds? Okay, if I'm not wrong, I think seeds does serve a better, okay, the outer coating of the seed, for example, is hard. Granted, this will definitely have a longer lifespan than what you expect of that. Okay, so not longer lifespan. Number two, with this seed, it can actually go through a lot of harsher conditions. It can now go through the animal's digestive tract, and an animal poop somewhere further away and still survive. So seeds do serve the function of helping sometimes itself to disperse even further than where it originally was. Because if you look at ferns, right, you often find a fern you just find the next baby fern somewhere nearby, because it's limited by where the water travels. So I think this might be one of the evolutionary advantages of developing seeds. Okay. Yes, hi you. Oh, did you say 2 egg cell? Okay, in the video, there's only 1 egg cell, but I've ignored the other cells that you find in the video. Your seniors used to learn every single cell found in the ovule. There are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more cells in the ovule, but we have taken out the syllabus, so we don't focus on that, but we just focus on the 2 that will eventually develop into something quite meaningful. Okay, so there's only 1 egg cell, not 2. Yes. Yes. Oh, how does it fertilize both? Okay, usually the definition of a fertilization, to be very precise, is when the nucleus fuse together. So I would say after the sperm cell has the cell membrane of the sperm cell has fused to this cell, this nucleus will be introduced in. Most likely the nuclear membrane of all 3 will break down. Then after that, you'll likely reform a new nucleus that contains 3 times the amount of DNA inside. That's usually what happens. Yeah, nuclear membranes will break down, and you'll reform a new one. Same for humans. I'm going to skip a little bit. Rather than go on to humans, I'm going to look a little bit, jump a little bit to what happens after fertilization. Because since we're there, if I'm not wrong, I mean, you can verify Valentina. In JH2, you all learn about how sperm and egg fuse. Yeah, you all learn structure of sperm, structure of egg, human repro. By right, you all should have learned that. By right, I taught you. Right, Isabel? Okay, but we're going to take a short pause. Let's go directly into the next step. What happens after fertilization takes place? May I get you to go to tab F? Go to tab F. F1. Okay, go to F1. What becomes what? Yeah, you're right. Okay, let's go to tab F1 now. Since, imagine now we're done with fertilization, double fertilization. And if all goes well, it should develop into a fruit. But what becomes what? Okay, let's do a quick relation now. So the question here is, what is the plant stalk used to be? What did the pericarp used to be? What the seed used to be? Okay, what is pericarp? Pericarp refers to the wall of the fruit. So when you bite into a chunk of apple, the nice crunchy sweet part, that's the pericarp. What is the fruit stalk? The fruit stalk, if I have to relate to you again an apple, the fruit stalk is this part over here. That's the fruit stalk. Okay? So, based on your understanding of the structure of the female ripple system of a flower, could you tell me what becomes what? What developed into the seed? What developed into the pericarp, the fleshy part of the fruit? And what developed into the stalk? Based on your understanding of the structure of the flower. Do I get everyone to have a book? Okay. Hey, what part is the pedicel? Suddenly my brain fart. I cannot remember.
Below the receptacle.
Below the receptacle. Oh. Okay, I did not teach you all that. The receptacle is above the pedicel. Oh, it's a peduncle. Yeah, really terms we thrown out today. Okay. Wow, okay. Learning new things today. Peduncle. Yeah, learning new things up. Peduncle. Oh. Thanks, Santosh. It's not made up word. Okay, peduncle, pedicel. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's look at some of our responses. Okay, Keller says pedicel, ovary, ovule. Okay, pericarp used to be the ovary, seed used to be the ovule, the stalk used to be the pedicel. Santosh brought up the word peduncle. Actually, at first time I learned the word peduncle. Thank you. Serene brought up the word receptacle. Do you know where the receptacle is? If I scroll down, you observe that the pericarp, people tend to bring up ovary. Yeah, I like that Serene brought up fertilized ovules. Actually, that's true. The seed doesn't fertilize. sorry, the ovule, the egg inside doesn't get fertilized, you ain't going to get a seed. So sometimes when you get those seedless fruits, it's not because they're really seedless, it's the ovules didn't develop into a seed. You look very carefully, I mean if you have eaten seedless fruits before, you chunk into it, then you see a very white structure, look like a tiny little seed, right? Then you say, I got blood, actually there's still a seed. Actually it's not. There's an ovule containing an egg that didn't get fertilized. Seedless grapes, you bite into it before, right? It's not exactly seedless. You still see small little white structures that look like pre-seeds. Yeah? So, I like necessarily brought up fertilized ovules. Or to be precise, ovules that contain fertilized eggs. Because the ovule itself cannot be fertilized. There is egg inside. Okay, Yushin says, put it in the sepals. Alright, so if we look around, there are three variations. Receptacle, sepals, stem of the flower, peduncle, stem of the flower, style. Okay, so what could it be? Let's recap the structure of the flower. I'm going to draw an upside down flower now. Here is the pedicel. Then comes the receptacle of the flower. Then comes the sepals. Then comes the ovary with the stigma. Inside the ovary, you should find the ovules. What else do we have? Then we have the anthers, right? The male parts, the stamens. And I'm missing the petals, so we should have petals too. So let me include using black, okay, big petals here. Yeah, this is the structure of a flower. So what becomes what? Okay, you're right. The ovary will become the flesh of the fruit. The ovules inside will become the seeds of the fruit. What becomes the stalk of the fruit? So if you look at an apple, okay, biologically speaking, actually, from now onwards, if you go to the supermarket, you grab an apple, I want you to look at the base of the apple. Once you look at the base of the apple, you can often find the leftover stigma. Okay, go and search next time. Therefore, what's up here? This part makes sense used to connect to a tree. So therefore, it needs to be the connecting part. I believe that the pedicel is most likely the structure they used to hit come before. Okay, peduncle. So let's look at the structure over here, the new structure that Santosh found. Notice the pedicel is a direct link to the flower. So the peduncle is somewhere even before, linking to many, many flowers. Okay, that's what becomes what? Let's take a break now. I brought some fruits to class. I'd like everyone to have a fruit. You can have a look at the fruit. I'd like you to find out where all these parts used to be. See if you can find, or rather when you look at this fruit, I want you to try to think, how in the world did this fruit become as it is? Where did the ovary used to be? Where did the stigma used to be? Where the sepals used to be? I have two different fruits here. Everyone can take one of each kind of fruit. The first kind of fruit, raspberries. Okay, everyone take one raspberry. Oh yes, don't eat first. Take already, then you have a look at the fruit. Okay, if you like to, you can take a piece of tissue paper, and you can house the first fruit. Okay, so raspberries. Once you get the fruit, have a look at it first. Try to make sense. Where was the ovary? Where was the ovule? Where was the stigma? Where are the sepals? Where the pedicel? Where's the receptacle? Where they all used to be? The second fruit, I would like you to have a look at strawberries. Okay? So I have two punnets. Everybody can take one strawberry. And this can be our breakfast. Okay, I do not want leftovers. So once everybody has taken one raspberry, one strawberry, any leftovers, you all fight it out. You look at the fruit, you find where all the parts are, where it used to be. used to be what? Oh. Because if you understand the structure of a flower, then some of these fruits don't make any sense. Right? If you look at a strawberry, something doesn't make any sense at all. How did it become what it became? So when you look very close at all the structures, actually, the strawberries still come with the sepals. Do you see the sepals? Yeah, the green parts. So the sepals are still there. Is the pedicel still there? Yeah. Go and smell the. Give it a nice smell. By right, the strawberry should smell quite nice also. My wife said last night, she said it's like this part. So little bit sour. Okay, as you continue to grab your fruits, I'm going to show you a time lapse of how the raspberry fruit came to be. Sorry, it's a blackberry, but same, huh? This is the flower. Okay, as you can see, lots and lots of anthers. At the core of it all, we tend to find the female parts. This particular flower comes with lots of stigma connecting to the ovaries. As time goes by, if double fertilization takes place, you find that the ovaries start to develop. Hi, you went your mouth already? Okay, nothing to see already, I guess. If you haven't chewed it, you can still take it out. Okay, then as if double fertilization is successful, each one of the ovaries will start to develop into a tiny fruit. So what do you really have in front of you? If you look at the raspberry, can you still find the leftover stigma? Every single one of those small little knobs, that's one individual fruit. Or it used to be an ovary. So if I go all the way to the end, you do something like that. Can you find the leftover stigma of each one of the ovaries? So when you eat a raspberry, actually you are eating a conglomerate of lots of tiny little fruits. If someone ever asks you for raspberry fruit next time, just pluck out one of those small little parts and give it to them. What about the strawberry fruit? Okay, how in the world did the strawberry fruit come to be? Because where are ovules normally situated? Inside fruits. Inside the, or rather rephrase, where are ovules normally situated? Inside ovaries, right? But if you look at the strawberry, you find that the seeds are kind of on the outside. So how is this possible? What? Okay, you're holding your strawberries for very long. Okay, so the strawberry fruit is not what you think it is. I want you to look very closely at your strawberry fruit now. Look at each seed. Because in reality, each seed is actually the fruit. Look very, very closely at each seed right now. Do you see a little stigma coming out? Yeah? The truth is, when you look at a strawberry fruit, the real fruits are the seeds. These are the fruits situated on the outside. Therefore, if you were to take one of these and you were to open it up, you will find a real seed on the inside. What you're looking at is a fruit. Can you see? Go and zoom in now. You should see little stigmas coming out of each one of those seeds. Those are the fruits. Then what in the world was this original, what is this red part? Well, the red part is very interesting because the red part is actually this part over here, the receptacle. Yeah, the receptacle for the strawberry flower is the one that enlarges. So imagine this, imagine if this enlarges. Okay, it should be the other way around because you look at the fruit. Imagine the receptacle enlarges and all of the ovules, all of the ovaries are developing on the outside, each one with their tiny little stigma coming out. So it's the receptacle that actually is the one that enlarges. If you were to peel back the samples a little bit, you see if you can still find leftover male parts. Do you see? Do you see any? Okay, you already want to eat. You pop the rest right in your mouth. Okay, you peel back the samples. Can you find any stamens? Anyone found stamens? Anthers? Huh? Okay. Alright. Okay, you can crunch into your strawberries. If you are skillful enough, you see you can grab a fruit of the strawberry. Next time anyone asking for strawberry fruit, not willing to share, just give them one of those small little things and flick it in their face. Okay? If you crunch into a strawberry, therefore you should not find any seeds on the inside. Just a receptacle. This is what it used to look like. This is our seed. Okay, our leftover raspberries. And Shanice wants the whole thing. You go fire the back. I thought you put it in your mouth already. So when you go to the supermarket next time, as long as it's a fruit, you try to work backwards. See if you can find the parts. Now every time I go to the supermarket, I'll just like, people grab fruits to find the best one. I grab, then I flip to the bottom and I see if I can find the stigma. You search oranges, lemons, cherries, blueberries. Go and search for all the parts. Wow, it smells strawberries in there. Hey, eat bread, then you can smell the whole room. Like sweet strawberries. You weren't crazy enough to pluck out all the fruits? I've never torn open the strawberry fruit before. Therefore, I have no idea what the seeds actually look like. Mia managed to extract the seed out from one of the fruits, just look like any regular seed, little yellowish. Oh, okay. What? Yeah. Okay, strawberry or berry? Sure. I am not sure. Oh, do you mean all berries develop this way, is it? Not necessarily. Yeah, like Mia said, actually, you're not wrong, bananas are also counted as berries. So, I do not remember what the definition of a berry is. What makes a berry a berry? I'm not very sure. And the fruits we know of, not all fruits are like apples. For example, nuts. If you look at nuts, actually, where's the fruit? Like walnut. Where's the fruit? Did the walnut come with a fruit? Did not. The outer casing was the pericarp. And the nut is on the inside, right? So, what is a fruit sometimes doesn't look like a fruit. If you look at peanut, right? The peanut comes with that hard outer case, right? Before you peel open in the two seeds on the inside, right? And the hard outer case, it's not like you can eat it, like an apple can. So not all pericarps are edible. Some are not. Yes.
All the seeds around it. Then look like a fan.
Oh. Meaning like apple got skin, is it? Like orange got skin also. Oh. Okay, I do think that raspberry has a layer. Like each one of those actually has a layer to contain the flesh on the inside. It's just that it's just so small that you just eat the whole thing off. Right, what forms the peel? Well, because when you look at the ovary, actually the ovary, what we teach you if you zoom all the way in, the ovary also comes with an outer layer of cells. The outer layer of cells becomes a peel. Then all the fleshy part underneath will be where the fleshy part belongs to. Yeah, Christy?
You know those videos where like they like extract the strawberry DNA, right?
Oh, yeah.
So where's the DNA from? Is it from the seeds or is it from the flesh?
Oh, okay. I think it can come from both because when you look at the receptacle of the flower, they are still made of cells, right? All cells should come with nucleus. Inside each nucleus should still contain DNA. So it can come from there. Yes? Oh, that's not true. Sepals don't come only in sets of 5. Sorry, you don't only get 5 sepals at any one time. The flower we gave you last time round is just one flower. If you look at flowers and you go around the school garden, you find that they come in different number of sepals. So not necessarily 5 only. Okay? Okay, so we are about done with the plant version. So we are done with the fertilization plants. We looked at what happens after the plant gets fertilized, develops into fruits, and what becomes what. We're going to close out today by recapping what we learned in JH2 about what happens in humans. So let's focus our attention on how the sperm gets to the egg, because that's really the crux of the human journey. And I think, right, perhaps as we watch this video, you count how many ways the sperms die. Okay? Many ways, surprising number of ways. Some of them, the ways they die very lame one. You feel very sad for the group of sperms also. Okay, let's go.
Fertilisation is the epic story of a single sperm facing incredible odds to unite with an egg and form a new human life. It is the story of all of us. During sexual intercourse, about 300 million sperm enter the vagina. Soon afterward, millions of them either flow out of the vagina or die in its acidic environment. However, many survive because of the protective elements provided in the fluid surrounding them. Next, the sperm must pass through the cervix and open into the uterus. Usually, it remains tightly closed, but here the cervix is open for a few days while the woman ovulates. The sperm swim through the cervical mucus, which is thinned to a more watery consistency for easier passage. Once inside the cervix, the sperm continues swimming toward the uterus, though millions will die trying to make it through the mucus. Some sperm remain behind, caught in the folds of the cervix, but they may later continue the journey as a backup to the first group. Inside the uterus, muscular uterine contractions assist the sperm on their journey toward the egg. However, resident cells from the woman's immune system, mistaking the sperm for foreign invaders, destroy thousands more. Next, half the sperm head for the empty fallopian tube, while the other half swim toward the tube containing the unfertilized egg. Now, only a few thousand remain. Inside the fallopian tube, tiny cilia push the egg toward the uterus. To continue, the sperm must surge against this motion to reach the egg. Some sperm get trapped in the cilia and die. During this part of the journey, chemicals in the reproductive tract cause the membranes covering the heads of the sperm to change. As a result, the sperm become hyperactive, swimming harder and faster toward their destination. At long last, the sperm reach the egg. Only a few dozen of the original 300 million sperm remain. The egg is covered with a layer of cells called the corona radiata. The sperm must push through this layer to reach the outer layer of the egg, the zona pellucida. When sperm reach the zona pellucida, they attach to specialized sperm receptors on the surface, which triggers their acrosomes to release digestive enzymes, enabling the sperm to burrow into the layer. Inside the zona pellucida is a narrow, fluid-filled space just outside the egg cell membrane. The first sperm to make contact will fertilize the egg. After a perilous journey and against incredible odds, a single sperm attaches to the egg cell membrane. Within a few minutes, their outer membranes fuse and the egg pulls the sperm inside. This
Alright, that's the human version of fertilization. Actually, you learned this in JH2, so a quick recap. Some keywords that you came across. First and foremost, you have the sperm and the egg highlighted in red. You find that both should come with nucleus. So here's nucleus number 1, nucleus number 2. Okay? Other than that, you should have surrounding the egg her bridal parties, yeah, or her good friends. So these layer of cells, in your textbook, they should have been bolded as the corona radiata. The last time we saw the word corona was probably the coronavirus. Yeah? That's because when you look at the coronavirus, it looks like they have lots of structures poking out. And they call it the coronavirus because corona means crown. It looks like it's wearing a crown. Same for this queen over here. Yeah, it looks like she's wearing a crown that's radiating out. These cells, you know where they came from? They came from the structure it burst out from. Remember the Granapian follicle? Yeah? The Granapian follicle, the most mature form of the follicle. When you look inside an ovary, you find lots of these follicle cells. How do you spell follicular cell? You find lots of these cells that surround the egg. When the ovulation occurs, some of these cells accompany the egg out. You can find all of this in your textbook. No need to really draw. It's just a quick recap from what you learned in JH2. On this page of your textbook. So they give you the structure, and then you scroll down, they give you the whole process of fertilization. That's the first layer the sperm needs to contest with. It needs to push its way through the follicular cells of the corona radiata to reach this next quite impenetrable layer called the zona pellucida. This layer is made up of a lot of glycoproteins. meaning proteins that have sugars attached to them. The only way for the sperm to pass through is if it releases enzymes. Okay? It releases enzymes to digest this layer. These are hydrolytic enzymes. And you find these enzymes stored within this vesicle called the acrosome. So these are all structures learned before in primary school. JH2, just a quick recap. Once the zona pellucida has been digested, the sperm can then really fuse with the egg. Both nucleus can meet. Okay, then wedding bells. You may be asked what are some of the adaptations of the sperm. And some of the things you can bring up are number one, it's acrosome, how it digests, the zona pellucida. You could also bring up the mitochondria. We have lots of it, so that the tail can carry out its function to propel the sperm towards the egg. In your textbook, you may see some words like oocyte. Oocyte is another name for egg. I'd like you to ignore first polar body. Okay, but oocyte is okay. That's the egg. With that, we're going to close off this section for today. I'd like everyone, now that we've learned about how plants and humans fertilize each other, sorry, that makes sense. How fertilization takes place in plants and in humans separately. I'd like everyone to come up with one comparison point that you observe. Could be a similarity, could be a difference between both. Okay, if you look at the table, it looks like that. What I'm trying to get you to do is this. Often you find when we get you to compare things, right? Then you can compare maybe an apple and an orange, and then here's a feature. So I'd like everyone to just share one feature you notice about plant fertilization, human fertilization, and see how many you can find. So for example, the feature you may be comparing is color. And maybe this is red, this is orange. Would everyone just share with us, the class, one comparison feature you found? It's quite interesting. We're not going to really test you on this, but now that we know both, I think it's quite a nice challenge to see if you can match. Are there similarities, are there differences? And this is how it should turn out. So for example, Yixuan's one, you should see a feature, then you should see the 2 points for plants and humans. And that's where we will end off today. get E1, correct? Okay, we'll slowly look at some of your friends' points. Okay, Li Xuan says, how the zygote gets nutrients. Okay, that's interesting. Let's have a look at plants. In plants, endosperm tissue is what provides the nutrients. Whereas for humans, it is through the umbilical cord where you get nutrients from mom. Location of the sperm, Li Xuan says is found in pollen grain. Not located anywhere in particular, it's just a sperm. Yeah, okay? So it's a pollen grain, the sperm. It's not. Right? If your friends tell you that pollen grain is just like the sperm of humans, it's not. Christine says, okay, let's look at how the male cells race towards the egg. For plants, actually it requires the pollen grains that grow pollen tubes. That's how the sperms will eventually get to the eggs for double fertilization. Whereas in humans, the sperms themselves are the ones swimming through the vagina, eventually up the fallopian tube to where the eggs are. So she points out not just how it gets there, but also the journey that it will take. Isabel brought up the types of cells involved during fertilization. For females, in plants, you have two kinds. There's egg cell and polar nuclei that's involved in the fertilization process. For males, two haploid generative cells, or rather one generative cell that divides into two haploid sperms. What about the human? Human, just sperm and egg, I assume. Sion, okay, the method of transport, okay, kind of similar to Christine's point, through the pollen tube. This one, the sperms in humans, they propel themselves using their own flagella. Naru brought up number of egg cells. Oh, this is interesting. If you look at one ovary of the plant, you could have many ovules, each one containing an egg. Whereas for humans, actually the ovary releases one egg, every month. The sperms don't go all the way to the ovary and fertilize every single egg in the ovary. That would be quite scary for babies, right? Wani also brought up number of eggs. Many eggs to be in the ovules to be fertilized. Usually one ovule, one egg. So if there are many seeds, it means that there are many ovules, each one with one egg. Okay, thankfully humans one, maybe two. Equal say number of male gametes required, yeah, two, because double fertilization, one for humans. If brought up the parts are quite different. Rightfully so. Okay, when we talk about male and female parts, the parts are really quite different, structurally speaking. Okay, we may miss out some. We want to say site of fertilization. Oh, interesting. Okay, where does fertilization take place? For the plants, it takes place at the ovule, whereas in humans, it takes place along the fallopian tube or the oviduct. Okay, let's look at one more before we close out today. Here it says what each part of the repro system develops into. For the plants, actually each fertilized part develops into something different. For humans, one small one egg, that thing develops into the baby itself. We don't have one egg sac that runs along with us when we are small. Okay? Okay, Nicole brought up the ratio of sperms to eggs, or tube cells. This is interesting. Perhaps this is a similarity. Notice when it comes to males, kind of you spam as many as you got. Then after you see which one gets lucky. So if you ever think you're a failure in life, remember you're the one successful one out of 300 million. Okay? Okay, that's all. That's all for today's lesson. I'll see you again tomorrow and we'll close off the chapter.